Hi, friends. My name is JJ, and welcome to the very first episode of the MVMNT Podcast, where we're going to talk about all things dance and sometimes spooky. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, go ahead and follow, subscribe on Instagram, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, and all of the things. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So, what is the MVMNT Podcast? Well, we're going to dive into all things dance, fitness, product reviews, Dancing with the Stars episode reactions, some controversial topics in dance that people don't talk about enough, and sprinkle in something spooky along the way because why not? So, for today's episode, we are going to talk about how to become a professional dancer and my journey in doing so. Now, my journey is a little bit different than most. I started dancing at the age of 7, strictly in ballroom. That was all I ever did. My parents were dancing ballroom, so I started dancing. Then my older sister started dancing. And before you knew it, all of us were dancing. My mom, my dad, me, and my older sister. So my parents ended up opening up our own dance studio in Central Florida. And ever since then, I was raised inside the studio. And I only danced ballroom for the first 5-6 years of me dancing. So around 12 or 13 years old is when I started dancing all the other styles of dance, like hip hop, jazz, contemporary, lyrical, modern, the basics of ballet, belly dancing I did for a little bit. And from now on, I'm going to refer to that style of dance as the regular dance world, and then the ballroom dance world as the ballroom dance world, because they are two totally different monsters of their own. And I'll explain why in a little bit. And so I'm going to refer to them as such. Around that time, when I started learning all the other styles of dance in the regular dance world, that's when I decided that dance was what I wanted to do for a living. When I presented that idea to my parents, obviously, 13-year-old coming up to their parents and saying, "Hey, I want to be a dancer when I grow up," my parents were like, "I love that you love what you do, but you also need to go to school. So make me a deal. You can be a professional dancer as long as you go to school." And so now I am a full-time dancer as well as a full-time student. And that is a whole other podcast episode that we can get to on its own. And eventually we will. But right now, that's what I do. And that's kind of how I started dancing. Now, when it comes to becoming a professional dancer, when you have the ballroom world, it has its own way of becoming a professional. And you have the regular dance world that has its own way of becoming a professional dancer. In the ballroom world, you become a professional when you register with your organization as a professional. And once you register as a pro, you can't go back. In the regular dance world, there are so many different avenues that you can take. You can be a teacher, you can be a choreographer, you can be a performer, you can work at the theme parks, you can go on tour. There's so many different avenues in the regular dance world. So when did I become a professional dancer? Well, in 2019 is when I registered as a professional in the ballroom dance world. And that helped me transition to being a professional dancer in the regular dance world. Even though I'd already been teaching other styles of dance and ballroom around the age of 16, either teaching the class or assisting with the teacher. And I started managing the dance studio that my family opened up when I was 18. I really registered as a professional in 2019 when I was about 21 years old. That's when I officially became a professional. I started assisting in the managerial aspect of the studio when I was 18 years old because that's all I asked for my birthday. When I turned 18 was to become a manager at the studio, and because I realized that being a dance studio owner was what I wanted to do, which we'll get into a little bit later. 2019, became a professional. We all know what happened in 2020, and that actually was a really big catalyst for me becoming the professional ballroom dancer that I was and competing for that year and a half following the pandemic, because I was home, had nothing else to do but train and practice. So I'd actually set up my phone in my living room and AirPlay to the TV and be on FaceTime with my dance partner, and we would be dancing in our own living rooms, practicing our routines, practicing our technique, all of that stuff. Because if you don't know, ballroom dancing is a partner sport, and you have to be dancing with a partner in order for it to be ballroom dancing, pretty much. I mean, now it's kind of changing and they're doing like solo superstars and competitions and stuff, but regularly you're dancing with a partner. And obviously in 2020 we couldn't touch people, we had to be 6 feet apart at all times. So being on FaceTime and really practicing and knowing and being confident in the dancer that I was alone helped really push me to being the best ballroom dancer that I could, and really drive me to wanting to be the best ballroom dancer that I could once we were able to get back out there and back on the floor and competing and dancing and performing. So when everything started back up again and we were able to compete and perform and go out there and start dancing again, I was heavily competing in the world of ballroom from whenever we opened up in 2020 to about late 2022, early 2023, because I started going to school full time. And obviously, competing in ballroom, if you've ever done it, requires so much from you. And I really wanted to give my all, but I also had to focus on being a full time student in grad school. And that on its own requires a lot from you as well. So I'm not competing as of right now, but I am teaching and running the studio and all of that jazz and performing and traveling and doing what I love for a living, which is still dancing, just not competing. So that's the gist of when I became a professional dancer, but now we're going to talk about how you could become a professional dancer. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but there is not one path to becoming a professional dancer. If you're in the ballroom dance world, it's different than the regular dance world, which is different than the person next to you, which is different than the person across the room from you. Everybody has their own journey. So, all I can do is give you some tips and tricks on how to become a professional dancer, what to look for, what you should do, and all of that jazz. So, I have 6 different tips for you. Tip number 1 is to start by finding your niche. What is it that you want to do as a professional dancer? Do you want to be a teacher, a choreographer, a performer, a studio director? Do you want to compete? Do you want to go on tour? Do you want to go on Broadway? There's so many different things that you can do as a professional dancer. I knew for me that it was a little bit of everything. I wanted to be a studio director because I knew with that I could become a teacher and a choreographer and produce shows and all of that, which I love being on the behind the scenes part of it. But I also knew being a studio director that I could perform and travel the country to be able to do what I love. And I can still be on that stage dancing as opposed to just being behind the stage. Now, there's nothing wrong with either one. If you want to be just behind the stage, that's your niche and go for it, follow it. If you want to be the performer, go for it, follow it. That's my very first tip to you, is find out what is it that you want to do as a professional dancer. Tip number 2 is to find a mentor and stick by them. The most important thing in this dance world, because there's not a step 1 through 12 of what to do, is to still find people who have gone through that, who are going through it, who you admire, who you look up to, and have them as a mentor and have them in your back pocket to be able to call whenever you need help or advice. Be able to actually get real life insight to become a professional dancer. When you have your mentor, ask them for advice, ask them what you should be training on, where you can go find this training, and ask them if you're even ready to become a professional dancer. Some people may say that you're not, some people may say that you are, all depending on your niche. What is it that you want to do? And start training in that. And then once you're there and you're ready, and you have somebody that you trust that also says, hey, you're ready, then you can take the next step and jump into becoming a professional dancer. Step number 3, train, train, and never stop training. The most important thing that to take away is you should always be training. The second you stop learning is the second that you stop growing. You should never act like you know it all, because sorry to tell you, none of us ever do. Us, even as professional dancers, whenever I'm teaching, I still tell my students, hey, I'm still learning. I'm going out there and learning to come back and bring you tidbits of that. And that's what we do as dancers, is that we learn from one teacher and then we change it up into our own language and then we spit it out and we teach it to other people as students. That's what we do as teachers. And that's what you need to do as a professional dancer. Never stop training. Even if it's once a week, twice a month, whatever it is, you should always be looking to train and better yourself, so that way it can only make you as a professional dancer, your caliber, just rise up above what you were the day before. Whenever you're training and training and training, I want you to also think about this. I heard this one time and it stuck with me. Treat every class like it's an audition and every audition like it's a class. Every class should be treated like an audition, so that you are trying to get the most out of that class and really prove to yourself that you're able to do it. And every audition should be treated like a class, so you could take that pressure off of you and not feel so anxious and crazy and, oh my gosh, I'm auditioning and they're going to see me, and if I mess up, blah, 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 blah. No. If you treat the audition like a class, then it starts to kind of bring you down a little bit and you're able to really perform at your max. Tip number 4 is to build connections. Go out there and network, meet other dancers, follow them on social media, create your own group of people, so that way you can start to get that exposure with those people. And then you can get gigs here at this corporate event, or gigs over here at this party, or gigs over here on this show. So building connections is so, so important. In the dance world, to a certain extent, it is true. It's about who you know. And now I'm not saying that you need to go know the next Hollywood producer to be able to get into the next movie and this, that, and the third. What I'm saying is build a community within your own area. Wherever you are, build that connection. Then that can take you to who knows where, right? I've done so many gigs and so many events that I wouldn't have even dreamed of, but it's because I was connected with a certain person or connected with a certain company, and they saw something in me and they saw that potential and they saw my passion, and then that's how I ended up there. The more people you know, the more exposure you can get. And that takes me to another point within this tip is no more gigs for exposure. That doesn't work in today's world. Not with the way that social media is, not with the way that we can create connections with people across the globe. Gigs for exposure or gigs for free so that way people can see you most of the time never work. Us as dancers, we're performing as our job and it's what we do for a living, shouldn't be taken for granted as exposure versus being paid for because we are providing a service just like anybody else providing any other service. So no more gigs for exposure, but that also takes me to another point where it's know what you should charge. Going back to having your mentor, have them help you figure out what it is that you should charge for performing or teaching or choreographing, and have them help you figure that out. I've asked so many people what I should charge as I was growing up in the world of dance to be able to know, hey, for a private lesson of teaching this, I will charge X, Y, and Z. And then for choreographing for this group for this many hours, I will charge X, Y, and Z. Now, today, I know what I bring to the table. I know my resume. I know what I've done and I know what I can charge. So that is something for you to do. Make sure that you are charging appropriately, but also gigs for exposure shouldn't even be an option. Tip number 5, define what success is for you. Like I said, with ballroom, there's a whole other world of professionals. And with regular dance, there's a whole other world of professionals. So what is it that is successful for you? Is it performing at X competition? Or is it teaching X amount of dancers? Or is it performing on X stage? What is it that you want to do? And what is it that is successful for you? Find your dream it big, make a dream board, see it every single day, and work hard until you achieve it and then more. And I want you to always just be present in the moment and really living in what you're doing, because we started dancing for fun. We started dancing because we loved it, and then we turned it into a job, and we are so blessed to be able to call it our job and to be able to make a living off of dance. And even though it's hard, it's still possible, and that's what we get to do. So always remember that. Whenever you define success, still remember why you even started dancing. And tip number 6, some people may disagree with me, but it's about education. I am such a believer in the value of education, and not just in dance, but in something else, because you never know what could happen to the dance world. The dance world is ever evolving. It's never going to be the same. It's not the same when I started dancing, it's not the same before that, and it's not even the same as a month ago. Social media has changed that greatly. I'm sure we all remember what happened in 2020, and when everything shut down, what happened to us dancers. And it's really hard to talk about because I am the first person to say that I am not giving up dance for school, or I'm not giving up dance for another job. I'm currently in PT school and I love what I do with PT and I love what I'm learning. And the reason why I chose physical therapy was because I can tie it in with dance and work with dancers and teach dancers how to have long, healthy careers with our bodies. But I always said that if I couldn't keep dancing while I went to school, that I would never go to school. Okay, I understand that. That's what I've said before. But I also understand the value of education, even if it's something as like doing something alongside dance, or even if it's just getting a degree online or doing a trade school or something. Make sure that you go out there and still get an education. It is so important to have that because you can actually use that to even boost your resume even more as a dancer, because you never know what somebody's looking for. So like I said, there's not one path to becoming a professional dancer, because you can do it different than the person next to you and the person across the room from you. But it doesn't matter, because all of you can end up being successful, whatever success means to you. So this was a pretty short episode, but it's just for the first one. So thank you so much for being here for the first podcast episode. I really hope you enjoyed it and you stick around for more. Be ready to listen in and fall in love with the world of dance. So make sure that you like, follow, subscribe on Instagram, YouTube, wherever it is you listen to podcasts and all of the things. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.